Donald Trump called Democratic lawmakers traitors today for reminding active duty service members that they are obligated to refuse illegal orders. But it's worth remembering that this is not a radical concept. This is literally the law. And also, here's what Maryland Governor Wes Moore told me just last month.
He exposed the panic Trump was trying to hide, because the moment Democratic veterans reminded troops they must refuse illegal orders, Trump detonated. Suddenly, traitors, hang them, and threats filled his feed. Why such fury over a basic constitutional truth? Watch closely, because the real scandal is what this outburst reveals.
We take the oath that we are going to follow the Constitution of the United States of America, and we will follow the lawful orders of the commander-in-chief. And that's the struggle that I think for a lot of members of the military, they're figuring right now. We will follow the commands of our commander-in-chief. That's the oath that we took. When they're lawful.
When they're lawful. That's the key part. It's the same message. But Trump reacted differently this time. Maybe it's because his hand was forced in releasing the Epstein files. Maybe it's the recent wave of terrible polling headlines. Who knows? But what is clear, what has always been clear, is that his words have real consequences. And today the evidence came very quickly. One of the Democratic senators in the ad, Alyssa Slotkin, says she now has a Capitol police officer detailed to her 24/7. She said, quote, "We've had hundreds and hundreds, if not closer to 1,000 threats." That's just today. Joining me now are two Democratic members of Congress who were in that ad, who have served themselves, who are urging service members to remember their oaths. Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio, who served 3 deployments as an active duty officer in the U.S. Navy, and New Hampshire Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander, who served as an intelligence officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Let me just start by asking you each how you are and if you have experienced what Senator Slotkin has experienced in terms of threats over the last 24 hours or less than 24 hours.
No one wants to have the president call for their death and hanging, which he's done to us and other of our colleagues, and that's a terrifying prospect. But I know, and I'm certain Maggie will say the same thing, we're not going to be deterred from doing our job and doing our duty, upholding the oath we both swore and our colleagues have all sworn to the Constitution. I'm not going to be intimidated by this president or anyone else, and I think it says something to the country that a president, the most powerful person on planet Earth, when confronted with members of Congress saying a basic fundamental truth about our Constitution, responds with a threat of death. That tells you who he is in his regard for the law.
It's quite telling. It really is. Have you had to get any new additional protections as a result of what Trump did this morning?
Look, it's impossible not to take steps when the President of the United States threatens you with violence, but the bottom line is we love this country, we love our Constitution, and what we've said is simply what the law is. And that is not a crime. That is not sedition. That is our job as lawmakers. And our message is to our service members who we deeply respect and who need to know that we've got their back. I think, Chris, you probably feel the same way. If I were in the Navy now, I would want to hear from members of Congress, I want to hear from the country that we are supported in upholding our oath to this Constitution.
Because members of the military, I think some of them are scared right now about what they're being asked to do and whether it's legal, right? I mean, that seems to be what prompted you to be a part of this.
And I think, look, we have the best and brightest, we have the best fighting force in the world, period. People understand their oaths, and senior leaders have the assistance of JAG's military lawyers to help them navigate through these questions. I have the utmost confidence in our service members, from the most junior to the most senior, that they understand the responsibilities. It's something we learned, whether you were at boot camp or officer candidate school, you name it. You learn on day one that you are compelled to comply with lawful orders from the president on down, and you're never compelled to comply with illegal ones. That is a basic principle in our constitutional system.
I played a little bit of what Speaker Mike Johnson said earlier today. He got a second bite of the apple. I just want to play that, and we'll talk about it.
The words that the president chose are not the ones that I would use, okay? Obviously, I don't think that this is, these are crimes punishable by death or any of that. Sometimes he uses heated rhetoric, okay? But do any of you agree that that's appropriate, that they should be telling young members of the military to defy orders? You should think about the implications of that. The president's trying to make a point. I think he made the point.
First of all, I don't know what point the president was trying to make. You were not telling anyone to defy legal orders. Illegal orders, I've been around this town long enough to remember when supporting colleagues when there are security threats is a bipartisan thing, when supporting the military is a bipartisan thing. What do you make of that response?
Look, the speaker he's missing the point here. Our point is really straightforward and simple, and this is just not who we are as a country.
And look, I'll say it quite clearly. I heard from a lot of Republicans demanding that Democrats condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk, which we did. Mm-hmm. I was proud to say that when Donald Trump was nearly killed, we quickly condemned that violence in my home state of Pennsylvania. When Josh Shapiro was nearly killed in Governor's Mansion, you don't get to pick or choose when political violence shows up, whether you condemn it. I have not heard strong condemnations from my Republican counterparts. I hope they will do that. This shouldn't be difficult. The president called for our death and hanging because we said something basic and fundamental about our Constitution.
It should not be difficult, and I would condemn and call for, calm in any of those circumstances, and if anybody was threatened. Let's go back to the original meaning and reason for the PSA, or for the video that you all did. It was prompted, I know you've each talked about this in different ways in the media, it seemed to be prompted by concerns perhaps within the military, by some of what you have all seen as people who have served, that you have concerns about the legality of. This is one of the talking points from the right wing that I think is so insane, that there's no specific cases where there was any illegal actions. Tell me about what are you looking at that prompted you to want to be a part of this effort?
I'm excited to free fall
We've got a president of the United States who has repeatedly tested the boundaries of the law, who has issued unlawful orders, illegal orders again and again. Just today we saw a federal court responding to that. And we've got a Secretary of Defense who came before our committee, the House Armed Services Committee. I asked him a very simple question, a question that has only one answer. The question was, will you abide by a decision of the United States Supreme Court?
Because she let her son
He refused to commit to doing so.
Lily Dempster
this puts our service members in a terrible situation. And it's on all of us to be very clear. This is a moment for moral clarity and for legal clarity.
The Honorable
And what
Judge
we have
Lauren
done
Lake
is to
presiding.
state a simple
You may be
and
seated.
critical
Good morning, Your
principle
Honor.
of
Good
law.
morning, Sean. Thank you.
I think
Good
you're
day,
both
everyone.
providing a great deal of
This
moral
is the case
clarity.
of
As I
Sullivan
was just
versus
talking with
Dempster.
Jonathan Karl
Mr.
about, neither
Sullivan,
of
you are suing Ms.
people who are
Dempster
out
for
there looking for
$595.
conflict
You
or
say
looking
your
to
sister
make
owes
waves. You're
you
there stating
the
a
money you
principle and a
paid
value
for
you
Happy
believe in, which is
League
incredibly
for
powerful.
her son.
I
Is
thank
that
you
correct?
both so much for being
All
here.
right,
I
and
know
Ms.
this has
Dempster,
been
you
a
say
challenging
that it
day,
was
and you're standing
your
firmly
brother's
despite
idea.
that. Thank you again.
And your son didn't.
What you just witnessed is the clearest proof yet that the real crisis in this country isn't partisan. It's constitutional. Democratic lawmakers, many of them veterans with years of service in war zones, released a simple message reminding active duty troops of something every service member learns on day one. You are obligated to refuse illegal orders. Not controversial, not radical, not political. It is literally the law. And yet, the former president of the United States responded with death fantasies, accusations of treason, and amplified posts calling for lawmakers to be hanged. That reaction tells you everything. It reveals a leader who fears the chain of command may one day choose the Constitution over him. It reveals a political movement that treats lawful accountability as disloyalty. And it reveals a system where institutions protect powerful individuals instead of protecting democratic norms. These lawmakers didn't call for rebellion, they called for legality. They spoke directly to service members who are already wrestling with the moral fog surrounding questionable military actions, domestic deployments, and presidential impulses that push the boundaries of law. And immediately, the consequences became real. Senator Slotkin now has round-the-clock police protection. Nearly 1,000 threats poured in within hours. That's what happens when a political leader with a massive platform frames lawful constitutional reminders as treason. Words become danger, rhetoric becomes fuel, and ordinary Americans, public servants, veterans, lawmakers become targets. Meanwhile, Republicans twisted the message beyond recognition. Speaker Mike Johnson and others intentionally removed the word illegal, accusing veterans of telling troops to defy orders. They know the truth, but they also know that admitting it would break the spell of loyalty demanded by their standard bearer. This is how fragile institutions behave. They choose self-preservation over honesty. They choose silence over courage. And while they perform outrage for the cameras, Americans watching at home are asking the real questions. If service members aren't reminded of their legal obligations now, then when? What happens in a future crisis if unlawful commands are issued? What will troops be asked to do, and will they be punished for obeying the law? That fear is exactly why these veterans released their video. They've seen what happens when boundaries blur and leaders push the military into political battles they should never touch. They've lived through deployments where legality, morality, and orders collide. They know what's at stake. And the fact that Trump's response was not to clarify legality but to escalate threats shows precisely why the message was necessary. No one in uniform swears loyalty to a president. The oath is to the Constitution, every time, without exception. And when upholding that oath becomes controversial, when reminding troops of the law triggers calls for execution, that is when democracy is truly at risk. So ask yourself, what does it say about a leader when the truth scares him more than treason? What does it say about a system when institutions defend power instead of principle? And what does it say about us if we stay silent? Share this video, subscribe, stay loud, because accountability only dies when the public goes quiet, and we're not going quiet.